think the problem is the whole ecosystem. Like even research in India, even if you see research that is IITs and all that, they just those reports collect dust. None of it is actual research. I would not like to mention which IIT, but when we went there with a block of straw clay to be tested, the PhD students who have been working on clay were touching it because they have never touched clay in their lives. So they only do secondary literature review and then they write some things and just to get their degree. So there has to be a very strong culture of action research and impact that should result. And like for instance, a lot of corporates are willing to fund us because they see impact on the ground. The passive solar prototype are now being sold to the Indian Army, and the soldiers on the frontier areas are actually benefiting from it. So it is that virtuous circle that has to start. Research has to become relevant. It has to have an impact, and it has to benefit the corporates. They then fund it. The government see that people are happy. So it's that virtuous cycle has to be put in place.
So, well, my next question would be to ma'am, Dr. Palu. Ma'am, you mentioned that CSR is multidisciplinary, and which is, and you very nicely elaborated the entire concept. You talked about the COF. Of course, All India, right? All India. Like ma'am is sitting here. Ministry is also very serious about CCUS. A lot of initiatives are also being talked about and kind of making it on ground. Organization, the other initiatives in terms of carbon neutrality, all this kind of aspects are coming up. And the overall fundamentals or the philosophy with which you mentioned that okay, CSR and this kind of initiatives are not something two boxes. They are kind of part of the same box, and we are going ahead with that, which very nicely came up. The fact is, I would like to slightly contextualize this entire thing for CIL. I would like to hear your perspective on that. See, as a country, we are around 2.7 billion tons of CO2 emission against a global average of 37, 38 billion tons. India, as such, is not the alarming zone. Alarming zone is China, which is more than 12, 13 billion tons. So first, India, which is not at that stage. Second, if I convert that into per capita, we are merely 1.74 tons, which is again far below than the global average is I think 4.7 or something like that. So we are way below that as well. And when I talk about coal India, coal India would be something like 27 million tons. Again, in terms of the overall thing, it is very low. So while we're talking about CSR initiatives, we're trying to get these things mapped with that. Do you really think that that is the prime focus area for an organization like Coal India? Or that should be the focus area for the ecosystem? I mean, the next step is power producers for that. What are your take on that?
Okay. So what you are saying, I perfectly agree with you. That definitely, if we compare in global terms, we are nowhere. But still, we are just trying to be a little more proactive as far as the planetary responsibilities are concerned. So we have to go beyond what is minimum that is expected of us. And that was the reason the net zero came up 2070, that even though we are as per the emissions levels, per capita emission levels, we were not supposed to go for that. But still our Prime Minister took that initiative. So basically it is, India has always been a leader as far as the environmental responsibilities are concerned. So keeping that in mind, the proactive approach on the part of our country, and PSUs particularly, they have to be aligned with the government agenda, international agenda. So keeping that in mind, it is very much required. And again, I'm not talking about how the initiatives are going to be scalable and all. We are, as Ram has also pointed out, we are only talking about prototypes. So at least the organizations like Core India should start taking initiatives in terms of alignment with the academic organizations regarding such initiatives, reducing emission and all these things. It will take time. 2070 is not very close. We'll definitely be able to go with that. And that's what from my side. And our institution, as an institution in forest management, I'll just extend what the question of forest that you was posing to Mr. Ramaiah, that IIFM has been supporting various afforestation activities of different organizations. Rather, organizations are approaching us that they want to do afforestation, but they don't know which species, what will be the survival rate, whether that will survive or not, sustainability, all these issues are cropping up. So our institute is having the technical expertise through which we can just provide you that knowledge inputs in regard to how to go with afforestation, which species and how to just make them sustainable. And we have forest development corporations. We are not actually the executors of all, we can just provide the knowledge inputs. But we have our arm of forest department that is through forest development corporations. So they are actually into the afforestation business. So if the organization like Coal India or any organization, they want afforestation activities, so they can align with the forest development corporations to just implement their afforestation activities with IAFM as a knowledge partner. So this is something. Plus one more thing I would like to share is extending from the panel in the morning, that regarding the branding issue that was coming up. So in regarding that, IFM and our Center for CSR, we can definitely align with various organizations and with Coal India for documenting some of your best practices in a manner so that they can be globally highlighted, not only in India, but they can be globally highlighted by writing into various scientific journals, national and international journals. So that role, of course, our institution can play in regard to CSR communication. Of course, we are just creating the human resource which is working as the CSR professionals in various organizations, including Coal India. But from the center's perspective, documentation of best practices of CIL and its subsidiaries, that role we can definitely take up, and that will just give you a boost in terms of particularly the written literature at national and international level. So that aspect we can definitely.
Definitely, no. That's the reason why probably Coal India is also in touch with Coal India is pretty serious about this. I mean, at least as a consultant, we have seen that Coal India, there are multiple initiatives among all the subsidiaries. Sir mentioned a lot of points which are happening in the subsidiary. Similar points are happening in almost every subsidiary. So there are a lot of initiatives which they're already talking about. They're taking those things very seriously. And of course, it has a bright future, at least in terms of execution part of it. So with that, my next question to Mr. Kakaria, the point which you mentioned about IRESA, where you were mentioning about integrated agriculture. Sir, the point where I was also discussing that earlier with you, I would like to understand, sir, your view on that, is that mining culture and mining ecosystem is somewhat different. And you mentioned that there are a lot of correlations that can happen there. So if you can just come out with few case studies or few examples which we can directly contextualize what can be happening, what we can do at ground, like you mentioned about COVID. So similar kind of initiative which can be coming up in terms of IRESA and implementing that in say abandoned mines or ongoing mines or that kind of process. Just as a food for thought.
Sure, I think it will be quite interesting. These soils in general, whether it is cultivated area or non-cultivated area, these are degraded soils. And especially in the areas where the mining operations may have happened or in the surrounding areas, they are likely to be degraded. So with this approach, one can actually attain the circularity. And circularity in today's context is very important, ensuring the overall ecosystem health. In that particular model, and it also brings in livestock. And livestock can become second major source of income for families, in addition to the crops. So crops, they also require nutrition, whether it is tree crop or any field crop. So that particular model of integrated renewable energy and sustainable agriculture, that addresses number one, the fuel requirement of family for their cooking requirement, biogas. The filtered water can very well be taken back to the agriculture for healthy crops, reducing the chemical inputs, and the dried slurry again can be taken back to the soils with enriched both microbial activity as well as the nutrient contents. And overall, without using any outside input, one can actually generate the income for the families, and one can actually enrich the local ecosystem. And soil health in India, as we know, considering the level of soil carbons, considering the level of degradations, and need for the landscape management, this particular initiative can help in doing that, achieving circularity. And in addition, I think the combination of the crops, I'm not specifying depending on the local situation, tree crops or feed crops, or combination can take care of both environmental issues as well as the issues of livelihood of the people. So I think with this collaboration, and very important aspect, again I may not have talked about it, is the social engineering. If people get benefit out of it, people are made aware, they are sensitized, this entire stakeholder community is sensitized, together they can actually create a sustainable and resilient kind of ecosystem in that particular area. And if that ecosystem is able to feed very needy community with their local resources, they will be the first people to take care of their resources. And that is the major challenge in any program, any projects. We plant trees, we promote many good practices, and then once the project is closed, it goes back to square one. And if it is only on the basis of emotions, that is very temporary. We go, we have campaigns, we motivate everyone, all stakeholders are very enthusiastic, including the local communities. And with that enthusiasm, lot of plantation programs happen. And that goes drastically, very quickly back to zero. And it is primarily only because of emotion. So it has to have very strong economic aspect to it. And one can very well achieve both economic and environmental conservation together. One more important aspect, and I think that is what is our approach as well. The complementary role of the organizations like BIAP or civil society in general. So wherever we have large scale programs like in Uttar Pradesh, we are there across all 75 districts, covering entire dairy sector program for the state, many other states also. So with very close association with the departments, whether it is livestock department, agriculture, or for that matter, even forestry, together we identify the gaps. So wherever government is able to provide services, we are happy to support in whatever way we can. But wherever there are gaps, together BIAP and the department, we address those gaps. And I think identifying those gaps, not only through government, but also private sector. So the private sector, the civil society, together they plan, they collaborate, and the plan is to happen through communities with good understanding of the resources and of the opportunities with which the resource enrichment happens and the returns also flow back to the communities. Together, and that is why that collaboration, very important aspect you have brought in today, is very, very crucial. Collaborative planning, collaborative implementation, and sustenance through community organizations.
Thanks, sir. Nicely elaborated. So now I'll request audience if you have any question. I do have one, but I'll ask that in the last. So any questions from the audience? Yeah, somebody there. So, well, by the time you're thinking, I'll just take this opportunity. Oh, sir.
Please give a mic to sir.
is a question not to the panel but to the Deloitte as a consultant. So you can understand I am up to some mischief. तो mischief ये है कि we heard this morning also, and this is a debate which usually comes, कि एक CSR की लेवल होती है जब आप बैग देते हैं, बेंच लगा देते हैं, डेस्क देते हैं, and something which is quite transformative, like what HIL has done. तो एक तरह की हायरार्की होती है. बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस की भी कहानी हमने सुनी. वो कहते हैं ना, बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस आर लाइक वो हजारों साल नरगिस अपनी बेनूरी पे होती है, बड़ी मुश्किल से होता है चमन में दीदावर पे. तो मेरी मिस्चिफ ये है कि इंडिविजुअली ईच प्लेयर डजंट हैव द टाइम, द बैंडविड्थ टू collate it into some kind of a ready reference document. Would Deloitte, which is very ably supported the previous CSR conclave and this conclave as well, agree to do this kind of collation and really build up a hierarchy of the CSR intervention? उसका पिरामिड बना दीजिए ताकि आपको पता चलेगा कि झोला देना, सॉरी झोला नो अदर सेंस, बच्चों को स्कूल में गुड गोइंग, बेंच बनाना, वो एक लेवल की होती है एक्टिविटी जिसका एक समय था, जिसकी एक अहमियत थी. अब लेट्स यू आर बेसिकली से ग्रो आउट ऑफ इट. तो प्राइमरी स्कूल, मिडिल स्कूल, सेकेंडरी स्कूल, ग्रेजुएट्स, प्रोफेशनल्स एंड PhDs, नॉट फ्रॉम IIT. ये अगर आप हायरार्की बनाते हैं, आई थिंक इट विल बी एक्सट्रीमली यूजफुल conceptual contribution to the literature on CSR, not just theoretically but in terms of doability. So होगा क्या कि आप प्रेशर में आके आपने बेंच तो लगा दी, जब वो देना पड़ता है ना अपनी रिपोर्ट में, एनुअल रिपोर्ट में, फिर आपको लगता है कि वो शेयर होल्डर हंसने वाला है. So that itself becomes a check. And this best practice documentation में पिछले बार भी मैंने कहा था, what is required is you also create a SOP. So my question in short after this bhumika is, would you be willing to do this? Thank you.
Of course, sir, I'm sitting here for that.
I have one question.
Sir, I would like to just react to what you just said, Agnihotri sir. You know, education is somehow making us more and more away from reality. And you know, you don't need a Deloitte to put best practices. You just need sensitive, caring individuals who care for the society and come up with solutions. I must tell you this, that just as Sonam did not know about what is an NGO way before he was into it, so did we not know about SDGs. And when we started mapping it for some organization who wanted it, we found out of the 17, we are qualifying for 16 SDGs. The only one we didn't qualify is life underwater because there was no water in Ladakh, it's a desert. So it does not take a Deloitte, sir, and it takes each of us, you know, youth who have to be trained to feel sensitively for your motherland. We have to create individuals, youth, who actually can take up their contexts. You know, if we use Deloitte, with all due respect, we teach people, we give people fish, and we don't just feed them for a day. But if we empower the youth through this and sensitive individuals, then we give them a fishing rod and they can have fish for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely, yes, sir. If you allow me just to add to that.
Sir, I have one question to Khabar, sir. Hello.
Yes, sir, please.
Actually, there is one problem in villages. Particularly, what happens, there are a large number of trees around the land, agricultural land. So, because of which actually soil fertility gets affected, so people cut them regularly. So, is there any way out so that we can use those leaves of those trees and convert them into manure and regularly trim them? So, can we do such training program session, or do you have adopted any such practice?
We work other way around actually. we ask farmers to plant trees in their land and they conserve, they protect it, they grow it, and they harvest the benefit of it. If the trees are planted without consultation, if they are not relevant to the farmers from both economic point of view as well as the environmental point of view, nobody, whether it is in the land, in their own land or outside, would be careful about protection. So our entire program, which I mentioned, more than 2 lakhs of hectares, the trees planted even 25 years back are very well conserved because they are chosen by the people themselves. And that is how they grow it and they protect it. So we can discuss in detail about, depending on the local geography, agroclimatic condition, we can have a set of or the number of trees appropriate in that particular settings.
Thank you. So, can I come to my last question, which I had now relate to the point which ma'am mentioned? You're absolutely right. There are certain things for which it's not about whether delight or any other which is important. It is the point which Mr. Sonam Wanchuk mentioned in the beginning. It's a discussion between education and culture. It's nothing but a difference between education and culture. It's not that if the literacy rate is very high, that means that the culture is already there. There are certain things which is a cultural transformation which is happening. We all are witnessing that every day. Just go to, I was discussing this morning about millennials. Millennials during your young days, have you ever imagined that one day you'll be sitting with mobile 24/7? You never imagined that. Today, the next generation, Gen Z, they think about that. They're smarter people. The next generation is going to be smarter. There are a lot of things which we as a culture adopt. And the point which you mentioned, that every day is a learning for all of us, including us. We keep on, interacting with people like you is basically a learning for us. And that is how all of us survive. So the point which you said, the only difference which we create is we document things. And that is what people like us are doing. So once we get into that, and once we come out with that particular point where I would like to, I was actually going to ask you that question, that culture versus education. If you obviously there are a lot of things which are crossover, but as a culture versus education, how do you see going forward, and which is more important for us? Was my question. So now I've rejected the point which I said, because my guys are already documenting it. We are documenting your answers.
And to answer.
Yeah, of course.
So as I said, the lever for change is education, and that's where we have to start. The problem today is we are using education just as a means of livelihood. Okay, we are teaching our kids to just learn, earn a BMW and a house in some fancy colony and so on. That's where the fundamental mistake is, and that is why we have terms like midlife crisis, because that's not how we are as human beings. This Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is not just a phrase. We are only fulfilled when we work for the betterment of the entire planet. Loka Sangraha, as the Bhagavad Gita says. So my point is this, that in our education system, we have to create two things. One is capability, which is very important. But along with capability, that spirit of sacrifice, which is not fully focused on me as a person all my life, but start with at least 5%, 10%, and slowly, by the time you're 50, you should be 100% committed to working for your society. And that's what we had terms of Raja Rishis, like King Janak. They were kings, but they were rishis at heart. They worked for the benefit of society. And that's what Plato conveniently took it and coined it as philosopher king. So a Raja Rishi of the youth have to be created. There is no other solution. Everything else is like a stopgap solution. It's only when we have philosopher kings, when we have capacity, administrative capacity, technical capacity, that is what we need. But that capacity is not just focused on me, selfishly, but to improve the society, then sir, all that we say will come into place. Thank you.
Any question from the audience, or we are good for the day?
A big thank you to all our esteemed panelists for sharing their valuable insights and engaging in a thought-provoking discussion. Your contributions are truly appreciated, and thank you to a wonderful moderator from Deloitte for skillfully guiding this discussion and keeping us on track. Your efforts are greatly appreciated. Moving forward, now I would request HOD CSR CIL, Ms. Renu Chaturvedi, to please come on stage and honor and felicitate Ms. Gitanjali JB, co-founder and CEO HIAL, and Dr. Parul Rishi, chairperson CSR IIFM Bhopal. Let us give her a big round of applause. Thank you, ma'am. Now I would request GM Welfare CIL, Shri HS Mishra sir, to please come on stage and felicitate Director Personal CCL, Shri Harshnath Mishra, and Director Personal BCCL, Shri Murli Krishna Ramaiya. A round of applause for sir. Thank you, sir. Lastly, I would request our General Manager CSR Central Coalfields Limited, Shri Ladi Balakrishna, to please come on stage and felicitate and honor Shri Bharat Kakade, President Bayer. Round of applause for sir, please. Thank you, sir. I would request all the panelists to come together for a group photograph, please. With the moderator from Delaware.
ऐसे ऐसे यही ना लेना ऐसे अभी नहीं भरने दी पूरा आएगा
Thank you, sir and ma'am. I would request the dignitaries on stage to kindly take their seat among the audiences.
फोटो भेज
As we move ahead with the program, and we are towards the closure of the program, but before that there is an announcement. Tomorrow there is a presentation on the best practices on CSR by the Coal India subsidiaries and CIL. Along with that, there is a brainstorming session wherein 7 teams have been formed with a team team leader and a coordinator. Each team has mentors, and there are 20 to 25 members in each team. 7 topics are there, and everything is displayed. I would request everyone to go through their names, and the team leaders should coordinate with the team members and the team coordinators and be prepared for tomorrow's presentation. Tomorrow the teams will convert the theory into practice. Whatever they have learned today, the teams have been constituted out of the fellow participants. So before we conclude for the day, I would like to express my appreciation to the speakers and distinguished guests for their valuable contribution towards this conclave. My deepest gratitude to all who have attended the technical session today and helped making this conference a great success. Thank you all for being such a great audience. And we have organized a gala evening at the Jawahar Nagar Club, Kake Road, Ranchi, which is few kilometers from here. If anybody is having facing any issues reaching there, you can contact the volunteers or us. We have some beautiful performances lined up.